And as a source said to me, William thinks the Sussex brand is worthless. It's so tarnished. It's worthless. Why are we fighting? Let them be. Let them. They're not as powerful as you think. They're not as powerful as they think. They're not going to bring down the House of Windsor. In fact, you do the opposite. You encourage Harry and Meghan to do more because the more they do, the more people realize this isn't right. This doesn't feel kind of cool. This doesn't feel good.
Prince William has reportedly made up his mind the Sussex brand is worthless, and the palace should stop wasting energy fighting Harry and Meghan altogether. The reasoning is cold and calculated. The more visible the couple becomes, the more the British public sees the massive gap between real royal duty and what looks like a commercial imitation of it. This assessment is now making its way out of palace walls, straight to Rob Shooter, the American showbiz reporter behind the Naughty But Nice Substack, and the guy widely credited with tracking every move of the Sussex household from California over the past year. What Shooter has put on the record this week is a major shift in how the institution is now handling the Sussex situation. 6 months ago, according to his sources, the palace was furious. There was real anger, real emotional energy being burned reacting to every new Sussex statement, every commercial launch, every media briefing. Now, silence. Dead.
As the British royal family finally tell Prince Harry to go away and never come back again, he is attempting to build his own monarchy. He doesn't anymore. He may want to be the people's prince, but Diana knew the crown only mattered because the crown came first.
Silence. This isn't a mistake, it's a move. The palace has gone from actively engaging with the Sussex problem to a cold, calculated indifference. And that indifference? It's the strategy. The internal framing, according to Shooter's source, is simple. The let them doctrine. Let them talk. Let them tour. Let them launch the candle collection. Let them try to cash in on outfits through one-off. Let them post astrological content on Instagram. Let them show up at the Kyiv Security Forum, calling themselves working royals. Every move the Sussex household makes builds a public record, and the public is watching, drawing its own conclusions. The palace doesn't need to argue anymore. The Sussex household is making the case against itself, and what once looked like institutional weakness, the inability to publicly fight back, is quietly becoming the palace's greatest strength. The royal institution has always operated through symbolic power and controlled silence, and now it's returning to exactly that. The let them doctrine brings the palace back to its natural way of operating, after 6 long years of reactive, exhausting responses to every Sussex move. Shooter's public relations framing on this is worth paying attention to. His career has been built representing high-profile clients, including people whose reputations were in far worse shape than anything the palace is dealing with right now. The principle he lays out is straightforward. The noise doesn't matter if the truth is on your side because the truth always comes out. And on this front, the palace has the truth. Charles is delivering real institutional duty while quietly undergoing cancer treatment.
Potentially. Harry is emboldened by what happened in Australia. He enjoyed himself. He enjoyed going to meet people. He's awfully good when you send him to a hospital to meet with children. He gets down on his knee and he has that Princess Diana quality about him. He's missed doing that. He's awful in a meeting at Netflix. He's awful in a business meeting. He's just not very good at doing very much.
William just landed a historic Tatler cover, positioning him as a prince for our times. Catherine is stepping back into her public role during her own cancer recovery. Charlotte's birthday content is hitting audiences with warm, measured family moments that land almost universally well. The Cambridge children are attending normal upper-class British schools. The output is real, it's consistent, and it speaks for itself. The Sussex household, by contrast, has noise and not much else behind it. Astrological Instagram posts, one-off fashion partnerships, ghost-written tributes, recycled personal narratives. None of that is substance. It's publicity chasing an audience that is increasingly clocking the emptiness behind it. The King's state visit to the United States in May showed exactly why this doctrine works.
I'm going to do it by myself. I don't need them. They had nothing to do with the trip to Australia, which still, in Harry's eyes, went particularly well. He enjoyed the attention. He enjoyed playing being a prince again. And there is a place for that. It's not going to be as large as what his mom had for all the reasons that I pointed out in my Substack story.
While still in cancer treatment, he ran a full 5-day diplomatic operation presenting the HMS Trump Bell, lifting whiskey tariffs between Scotland and Kentucky, earning a bipartisan standing ovation in Congress, and hosting a White House garden party attended by Sarah Jessica Parker, Lionel Richie, and Anna Wintour. In Shooter's words, the difference between the two is like comparing The Lion King on Broadway to an amateur production in Birmingham. The Sussex household, by direct comparison, delivered something very different during their Australian tour: empty barricades in Sydney. A Roy Morgan poll showing 81% of Australians said the tour did nothing to improve their opinion of the couple. A Bondi Beach memorial visit where Harry was filmed touching a stranger in a way that raised more than a few eyebrows. And a Her Best Life retreat with roughly 47 paying guests where Meghan spent approximately 30 minutes before leaving. Both products landed in the same month, side by side, for the whole world to compare.
Walking behind his mother's coffin. And Harry, despite all the things he's done, we probably disagree on this one, but despite all the things that he has done, there's still part of me, Dan, that wants old Harry back. And I could forgive Harry. I think I could, because I want to believe that there's a good guy in there. As days go by, as months go by, as weeks go by, I don't know if I completely believe that anymore.
The audience reached exactly the conclusion the palace had been counting on. The institution does this better than anyone on the planet, and the Sussex household simply does not. This is the core argument laid out in Dan Wootton's broadcast with Shooter this week, and it connects directly to a bigger picture about where Harry's head is at right now. Because, according to Shooter's sources, Harry has reportedly stopped trying to find his way back into palace life altogether. He has accepted that William will never forgive him, that the separation is permanent, and that any further attempt at reconciliation through official channels is a dead end. The evidence is in his behavior during the King's recent state visit. Earlier this year, Harry was making visible moves toward reconciliation, including a face-to-face meeting with Charles at Clarence House during a UK visit. But during the May state visit, nothing. No meeting requested, no signal of availability, no invitation extended, and no reaction to being left out.
Believing that he was going to lose Catherine, the Princess of Wales, because of her cancer fight. And actually, that hardened his resolve, Rob, rather than actually made him want to forgive Harry or bring Harry back into his life. It was actually like, no, I want to keep this guy out, because I need to focus on what's really important. And Catherine's really important. My children are really important. My father's really important.
He's internalized the verdict, and now he's building something else entirely. The model Harry is now reportedly constructing is the People's Prince, a global cultural figure operating completely outside palace control. Building a royal identity through international charity work, emotional accessibility, and high-visibility activism. The strategic blueprint he's reaching for. His mother's playbook. Princess Diana's playbook. Diana spent the final years of her life operating completely outside the formal royal structure, and she thrived. High-profile humanitarian missions, massive international cultural standing, enormous public attention, all without needing palace coordination or approval. Harry's thinking, it seems, is that he can replicate that exact model just with California as his base, his own foundations replacing institutional vehicles, and social media platforms that Diana never had access to during her lifetime. According to Shooter, the Australian tour was the moment Harry convinced himself the People's Prince model could actually work. He loved the engagement. He visited children in hospitals. He got down on one knee in front of people with disabilities and connected with them in the exact way his mother taught him. The footage went viral. It showed Harry doing what he genuinely believes he's good at, and for a moment, it looked like something real.
A living ball of stress is unforgivable, given that they were battling forms of cancer, Rob, which are exacerbated by, guess what? Stress. And so I can't forgive it. And I think other people will too. And for me, I don't think that Meghan Markle is to blame for everything that Harry did. Like, I think she's a completely appalling woman who manipulated him in a lot of ways.
The conclusion he drew from that tour was bold. He doesn't need the institution anymore. His name alone is enough to generate attention and emotional connection. And that conclusion? It's partially right, but only partially. Harry can do the work. The problem is the ceiling. Diana had the weight of the institution behind her even when she was pushing against it. Harry has had that same weight completely withdrawn. His reach will never scale to what Diana achieved structurally. It simply cannot. And here's where Shooter puts his finger on something sharp. Diana's version of operating outside the palace was fundamentally different from Harry's, because Diana never stopped believing in the crown. She understood its value. She pushed against the institution, modernized it, frustrated it, but she never lost sight of the fact that her eldest son would one day inherit it. Her rebellion came from inside a system she was still deeply committed to. One source has now handed Shooter a line that cuts straight to the heart of it. Diana bent the institution. Harry keeps trying to burn it down. Diana was a monarchist, pushing the monarchy towards something better.
That Harry was a good guy when he wasn't, and they did. They can do it again. And so if Harry has the right people around him, he's never going to win back everybody he lost. But in this world, you can make a really good living off a small percentage. Now everything is niche. It's much smaller.
Harry is positioning himself as the alternative to the monarchy, entirely building his audience through opposition rather than through the kind of productive challenge Diana represented, and audiences feel that difference. Diana's public experienced her as the conscience of the crown. Harry's public increasingly experiences him as a resentful expatriate with a grudge and a content schedule. Shooter's breakdown of the personal resource gap is brutally precise. Diana had emotional intelligence, discipline, and restraint. Harry has resentment, a production team, and a podcast deal. Diana's emotional intelligence let her read rooms, anticipate reactions, and calibrate every public moment for maximum impact, all while keeping herself personally composed. Her discipline held her institutional position steady, even through periods of intense personal difficulty. Her restraint meant she chose her moments carefully, striking only when it would produce real structural effect, not just when she was personally frustrated. Harry operates on a completely different frequency. The resentment is constant.
When the king came here, he didn't even care. Like, he's not even trying anymore. For a minute, he was making a little effort, maybe not that big an effort, but now he's figured out, and not for the right reasons. He didn't want to make friends with his dad because he wanted to be a good son. He wanted to make friends with his dad because he wants to be a quasi-royal. He's now figured out after Australia that the worst lesson he learned in Australia was there is a role for him, and he can do all this without the power.
It's the emotional weather of everything he puts out publicly. The production team packages that resentment into content. The podcast deal turns that content into revenue. It's a machine that converts personal grievance into commercial product, and the audience can smell it. Diana produced genuine engagement. Harry produces grievance dressed up as engagement. Now, the Catherine cancer dimension which Wotton raises directly is the detail that has reportedly cemented William's position against any reconciliation. During the period Catherine was undergoing cancer treatment, William was privately facing the possibility of losing his wife. Her diagnosis was serious enough to pull her from public life entirely, triggering real public anxiety about her condition. William's reported mindset during that period was pure strategic focus. He could not afford to spend emotional or strategic energy on the Sussex situation, not when his wife's medical condition demanded everything he had. The cancer experience didn't soften William, it hardened him in the opposite direction. The lesson he took from that period was sharp and permanent. Direct everything toward what actually matters. And Harry simply did not make that list. Catherine, who could have been lost, mattered most. Charles, fighting his own cancer treatment, mattered most. The children, their stability, their futures, mattered most. Harry, who had spent years pulling commercial material from family relationships, including from Catherine's private cancer experience, was placed firmly outside that circle.
I felt it. 6 months ago, the palace was livid. They were angry. They were tearing their hair out. They didn't know what to do with these two. And now there's a hush. It's the let them theory. Let them. If they want to go out there and do it, let them. They're not as powerful as you think. They're not as powerful as they think. They're not going to bring down the House of Windsor. 2 people from California running around Australia, it doesn't matter.
And according to sources, that placement is now permanent. The parallel development wooden flags is what's being called Operation Thor, a push from multiple senior British political and journalistic figures suggesting Harry could be welcomed back into the fold if he's separated from Meghan. The Spectator, under Michael Gove, has published this framing directly. Boris Johnson has signalled similar sentiments. Even senior politicians like Shabana Mahmood, the current Home Secretary, have engaged with the question of Harry's possible return. The premise behind Operation Thor is that Meghan is the variable remove her from the equation, and Harry becomes reincorporable. But Wotton's response to that framing is direct and unflinching. It doesn't hold up against the actual record. Harry's choices were Harry's choices. The decision to sit down for the Oprah interview that was Harry. The decision to write Spare and to load it with material that damaged his own family that was Harry. The decision to extract commercial content from his mother's passing, his brother's marriage, and his father's coronation that was Harry. Meghan may have been alongside him, but Harry pulled the trigger on every single one of those calls. The British public.
Look at that picture. Harry and Meghan can never, ever give us that. And the palace has finally figured out their power. And I'd forgot it too. I'd forgot it because I was so annoyed with them. How do you handle them? How do you punch back? And the answer is you don't. In fact, you do the opposite. You encourage Harry and Meghan to do more, because the more they do, the more people realise.
On Wotton's reading, will not simply welcome back the person who made those choices just because the perceived influence has been removed. If forgiveness is ever going to happen, Harry himself has to own his decisions, not quietly reassign the blame to Meghan the moment the relationship ends. Operation Thor also has a foundational problem that Wotton identifies immediately. It requires Prince William to publicly forgive his brother first. Without that signal from William, the British public won't generate forgiveness independently. And William's documented position tells a completely different story. The Sandringham invitation withdrawal, the coronation exclusion plan, the structural separation. Rebecca English of the Daily Mail has reported Harry placed firmly to one side. None of that reads as a forgiveness signal. The Catherine cancer experience hardened that position further rather than creating any opening. Operation Thor therefore depends on the one person least likely to provide its conditions and relies for its execution on political and journalistic figures who are the furthest removed from the actual decision-makers inside.
Once again, the House of Windsor have won this. They're going to win this. These two are going to become more and more irrelevant, and as a source said to me, William thinks the Sussex brand is worthless. It's so tarnished. It's worthless. Why are we fighting? Let them be.
The institution, its external commentary dressed up as a credible pathway, and the British public, which has plenty of experience telling the difference, has already figured that out. Wotton identifies another structural barrier to any reincorporation, and this one is deeply uncomfortable. During the final years of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, both elderly and dealing with serious health pressures, the Sussex commercial pipeline kept rolling. The Oprah interview, the Netflix docuseries development, the early stages of Spare. Stress is a documented factor that worsens serious health conditions, and the Sussex output added sustained additional pressure to both of their final years. The British public, on Wotton's reading, has not forgotten that and will not forgive it. And now the same pattern is playing out again, with Charles fighting his own health battle while the Sussex machine keeps running. The structural reading is damning. The Sussex household has shown a repeated willingness to extract commercial value from the medical vulnerability of senior family members across 3 generations.
It's very much this idea that Catherine was threatened in some way by Harry and Meghan, and that's what resulted in all of this. Nina Meshkov is the latest going out there in the British mainstream media. You probably wouldn't have seen this, Rob, so I just want to play it to you so you can respond as to whether...
Once that pattern is recognized, it stops being a collection of individual incidents and becomes something far harder to excuse. The Nina Meshkov television appearance Wotton brings into the conversation is a live illustration of just how thin the Sussex defense has become. Meshkov appeared on British mainstream television to defend the household and delivered something Wotton describes as inarticulate and completely underprepared. Her entire substantive defense came down to 2 points. Harry has the Invictus Games and Meghan has faced unfair coverage. That's it. Wotton's observation is precise. Meshkov could not name a single concrete positive contribution Meghan has made beyond claiming the criticism itself is unjust. The contrast with the institutional figures delivering real, documented output speaks entirely for itself. Wotton can run through the list without hesitation. William, Catherine, Charles, Camilla, Princess Anne, Edward and Sophie. Every single name produces a track record of real, documented duty and achievement. Meghan, even from her own allies, produces no such list. The Sussex defence has reached a point where supporters can no longer build an affirmative case. All they can do is insist that the criticism is unfair, and that's not a defence, that's a position of surrender. Shooter's response, drawn directly from his own PR career, is clinical.
Session must continue. The big machine, the big carriage has to go on. I can't imagine that Harry and Meghan would give up their life in California. Why should they? They have a very, very good life. But they can do an enormous amount of good. Because, look at Harry's Invictus Games. Look at and actually, it's always blame the woman, isn't it? So Meghan gets, Meghan has copped it from the start. And I think she has a genuine connect.
Defending a client with no substantive achievement to point to is an unsustainable communications position. In PR terms, the truth eventually surfaces, and clients whose entire strategy depends on the truth staying buried are clients working directly against their own inevitable outcome. Then there's the Meshkov closing threat delivered on live television that there are plenty of royal secrets still to come out, believe me. That kind of statement fits a broader pattern of Sussex-aligned defenders using the existence of unpublished material as a pressure tool against the institution. And behind that threat sits a very specific operational structure, the autobiography preparation circle, confirmed by Dominique Hines in the Daily Mail, reportedly involving Oprah, Melody Hobson, Shonda Rhimes, and Nicole Avant as a 4-women inner circle. The threat carries weight whether or not the underlying material actually exists in the form implied, because the institution has to prepare for the possibility that it does. That's the entire mechanics of the pressure play. The closing data point on how thin the Sussex Defender ecosystem has become is the Scobie commercial performance, and it is not pretty. Omid Scobie, the most consistent Sussex-aligned voice in American royal journalism across multiple years, published a recent book that has reportedly ranked at approximately 25,000th on Amazon. Meanwhile, Shooter's own novel started with a whisper, climbed into the Amazon top 10, and briefly hit number 1. The market is making its verdict loudly and clearly. Audiences are actively rejecting Sussex-aligned content and actively rewarding the commentators documenting operational reality instead.
Is when she's trying to paint the positive picture. So it's like, oh, Harry has the Invictus Games. Well, that's it. We know that's it. And she's like, Meghan, what's Meghan done? People are sexist. People are sexist. Blame the woman. She could not, Rob, point to one positive thing that Meghan Markle has done for the world. And is that not the issue? Because we could all point to a multitude of things that Prince William has done that is good for the world, that Catherine has done for the good for the world.
And Scobie's book isn't the only signal. The As Ever launch underperformed. The chocolate Mother's Day product didn't sell out. The candle line hit manufacturing errors and pulled back. The wine launch flagged weak demand signals with a 3-bottle minimum requirement. Across every Sussex-aligned commercial product, the audience is voting with its wallet, and the votes are landing the same way every single time. The Scobie commercial collapse points to something much bigger than one book flopping on Amazon. It signals a full-scale structural power shift in how royal stories get told, who gets to tell them, and who the audience actually trusts to deliver the truth. The independent commentary network has now officially overtaken the traditional Sussex-aligned media ecosystem in raw audience reach, and the numbers don't lie. Shooter, Wotton, Lady Colin Campbell, Paula Froelich, Robert Jobson, and the broader Royal Commentary Network are publishing through Substack and independent YouTube channels at a level of financial sustainability that legacy Royal Rota correspondents simply can no longer reliably match. These are not fringe voices operating from the sidelines anymore. These are the main event. The pivot from print royal correspondence to direct independent publishing is documented, accelerating, and structurally sustainable, and the audience figures back it up at every single level. Readers and viewers are actively choosing independent commentary over legacy media coverage, and they are doing it consistently across platforms and with their wallets open. For the Sussex public relations operation, this development represents a serious and possibly irreversible problem. The gatekeeping mechanisms they historically depended on are losing their functional power at a pace the Sussex team does not appear to have anticipated or prepared for. The old model was straightforward: negotiate controlled access with Rota correspondents, limit the questioning, shape the narrative, and count on the resulting coverage reaching a large enough audience to move the needle. That model is now broken. The Sussex team can still negotiate those carefully managed access deals, but the reach of the resulting coverage is now too small, too contained, and too distrusted by general audiences to outweigh the independent commentary network operating completely without those restrictions and without those terms. The audience has already migrated. The leverage that came with controlling access to legacy media has evaporated because the legacy media no longer commands the audience it once did. The Sussex operation built its communications architecture on a foundation that has since shifted dramatically beneath it, and the cracks are now visible everywhere you look. But here is the bigger picture, and this is where everything clicks into place, because William's let them doctrine, the Catherine cancer hardening, Operation Thor, the Meshkov television disaster, and the Scobie commercial flop are not separate stories happening in parallel by coincidence. They are all facets of the same structural settlement, and that settlement is now completely locked in. Every single one of these developments points in the same direction: the institution choosing strategic indifference rather than reactive engagement. The political class probing for a pathway back that requires conditions nobody is willing to provide. The defenders running out of substantive material and falling back on vague threats and unfairness claims. The commercial products underperforming one after another after another. The audience commentary ecosystem growing stronger and more financially independent precisely as the Sussex-aligned ecosystem contracts. These are not random data points. They are the coordinated outcome of a structural shift that has been building for years and has now reached its consolidation point. The institution has chosen indifference as its permanent operating posture, and the choice is now irreversible. This is not a temporary tactical pause while the palace regroups. This is not a cooling-off period before some future re-engagement. The let them doctrine is the settled, documented, institutionally embedded operational position. And the sources feeding into Shooter's analysis confirm it is being executed with precision and without emotional ambivalence. The palace has moved on. The question of the Sussex household has been administratively filed and set aside. The institutional energy that was once directed at managing, countering, and responding to each new Sussex development has been permanently reallocated toward the actual business of the monarchy, and the actual business of the monarchy, as the King's US state visit demonstrated with stunning clarity, is operating at a level the Sussex household cannot approach, cannot replicate, and cannot compete with. The Sussex defenders have exhausted their substantive material, and the Meghan appearance made that exhaustion visible to a mainstream television audience in real time. When your most prominent media defender cannot name a single concrete positive contribution from the person she is defending, the communications position has reached its operational endpoint. Assertions that the criticism is unfair are not a defense. They are the absence of a defense wearing a defense's clothing. The British public, which has been watching this situation develop across years of coverage, is sophisticated enough to recognize the difference between a substantive rebuttal and an emotional deflection, and what Meghan delivered was deflection from start to finish. The audience has reached its own independent verdict by simply watching the comparative outputs side by side, and the verdict is consistent, cross-platform, and commercially documented. This is not a media narrative being imposed on a neutral public. This is a public that has been given the comparative information and has drawn its own conclusions through its own observation. The palace producing real diplomatic outcomes, real duty, real institutional achievement. The Sussex household producing astrological Instagram content, underperforming product launches, and a wellness retreat attended by 47 people. The audience does not need to be told which of these represents substance. The audience can see it directly, and the purchase decisions, the poll numbers, the tour attendance figures, and the Amazon rankings are all expressing the same collective assessment. The Sussex commercial structure has lost its leverage because the institutional connection it was built on has been visibly, publicly, and permanently withdrawn. The entire commercial architecture of the Sussex household, the Netflix deal, the Spotify deal, the book deal, the product launches, the brand partnerships was constructed on the implicit premise that the Sussex brand carried institutional royal weight. The value proposition to commercial partners was not simply Harry and Meghan as individuals. It was Harry and Meghan as figures connected to, adjacent to, and drawing credibility from the most famous and enduring royal institution in the world. That connection has now been severed in a way that is publicly visible and institutionally confirmed. Commercial partners considering Sussex deals are now evaluating those deals without the institutional premium that once attached to the Sussex name, and the commercial results suggest the evaluation is producing different conclusions than it once did. According to the Wakeford analysis, the operational runway is approximately 5 years, and within that window, the pressure will not ease. It will intensify, compound, and accelerate as each commercial underperformance reduces the resources available to fund the next initiative, as each failed product launch narrows the pool of partners willing to engage, and as the gap between the institutional output and the Sussex output continues to widen in plain public view. 5 years is not a long runway for a household operating at the cost level the Sussex operation requires to maintain its California lifestyle, its security arrangements, its production infrastructure, and its communications apparatus. The financial mathematics are running in one direction only, and that direction is not sustainable at the current burn rate without a significant commercial breakthrough that the current trajectory does not suggest is coming. The astrology content will keep providing cosmic framing for a very earthly and very practical contraction. The irony is almost too precise to be accidental. A household facing documented commercial pressure, institutional withdrawal, and audience skepticism, reaching for star charts and cosmic messaging as its primary Instagram content strategy. The audience that was once drawn to the Sussex brand by the promise of authentic human connection and progressive royal modernization is now being offered Mercury retrograde as an explanatory framework for the household's difficulties. The gap between what was promised and what is being delivered has never been wider, and the audience is documenting that gap through its own disengagement in real time. The autobiography preparation will keep building quietly and deliberately toward the moment a potential separation can be commercially deployed, and the Meshkov threat confirms the material is being assembled and positioned. The four women's circle reportedly surrounding that preparation, Oprah, Melody Hobson, Shonda Rhimes, and Nicole Avant, represents a formidable commercial and media infrastructure being built around a product that does not yet exist in public form. The threat that there are plenty of royal secrets still to come is not an idle comment from an underprepared television defender. It is a signaling mechanism communicating to the institutional audience that the Sussex household retains material it has not yet deployed, and that the deployment decision is being held in reserve as a pressure instrument. The institution, which has to calibrate its operational posture against the possibility that the threat is real, is doing exactly what the let them doctrine prescribes. In response, letting the threat exist without reactive engagement, absorbing the pressure without expressing it, and continuing to produce institutional output that renders the threatened material progressively less impactful with each passing month of substantive royal achievement. The institution will keep letting them be because letting them be is working. The strategic calculation embedded in the let them doctrine is being validated in real time across multiple data points, through multiple channels, and against multiple product categories simultaneously. The palace made a structural bet that studied indifference would outperform reactive engagement as an institutional response to the Sussex situation, and the evidence accumulating around that bet is running entirely in the form palace's favor. Every Sussex product launch that underperforms validates the doctrine. Every independent commentary piece that outreaches the Sussex-aligned media coverage validates the doctrine. Every audience poll that shows declining Sussex favorability validates the doctrine. Every failed reconciliation attempt that receives no institutional response validates the doctrine. The palace is not winning this through action. It is winning through the disciplined absence of action, and that discipline is proving more powerful than anything the Sussex communications operation has been able to produce in response. The audience will keep watching, reading, and reaching its own conclusions, and the conclusions will keep compounding. The structural endpoint is now visible to anyone looking at the trajectory with clear eyes, and without the emotional investment that has clouded so much of the commentary around this situation for years. The path between the current moment and that endpoint is simply the financial mathematics playing out against a very well-documented and very consistent behavioral pattern. The pattern does not suggest deviation. The mathematics do not suggest rescue, the institutional posture does not suggest re-engagement, and the audience verdict does not suggest reversal. The settlement is structural, the consolidation is complete, and the working through of its implications is now simply a matter of time, and of watching the evidence continue to accumulate exactly as the let them doctrine anticipated it would. If this full breakdown gave you the complete picture you were looking for, hit that like button right now and share this with someone who needs to see the full story laid out this clearly. Subscribe so you never miss when we go this deep on the stories that are actually shaping the royal landscape behind the headlines. Drop your thoughts, your reactions, and your own read on where this is all heading in the comments section below. We read every single one. We will see you in the next one.